the president issued this order for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which oversees you both, to cut off funding. Are you both filing lawsuits, and on what basis can you challenge this?
We're looking at whatever options are available to us. I think it's a little preliminary for us to be able to speak to the specific strategies that we might take.
Is that the same for PBS?
Yeah, we're obviously looking, and I would just say that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is a funding mechanism, but they actually don't oversee PBS or NPR. We're independent organizations.
Important point to make. But the threat of cutting off funding, whether it was in Congress or the president saying he's doing it now, that's not new, right? That's been a talking point for years. There have been efforts in Congress. You do have funding, I think, through 2027, but it feels a little bit different this time. Do you have a backup funding plan?
Yeah, it is different this time, and I've been through these battles now for a number of years. I've been at PBS almost 20 years, and I remember even going back to the Newt Gingrich days. But this is different. They're coming after us on many different ways. We're waiting for a possible rescission of those funds that have already been appropriated.
A clawing back.
There was an effort within the FCC challenging our ability to accept sponsorships from corporations, which is something that we have worked with the FCC on for many, many years. There was the executive order. There was the effort to try to remove a few members of the CPB board. So we have never seen a circumstance like this. And obviously, we're going to be pushing back very hard, because what's at risk are our stations, our public television, our public radio stations across the country. We get 15% of our funding from the federal government. That's 15%, but that's an aggregate number. Some of our stations in small communities, it's 40 to 50% of their funding, and for them it's existential, and that's what's at risk if this funding goes away.
So is it immediate for NPR?
In a similar fashion, if we were to see a clawback of these funds, which we know is part of the conversation from a rescission standpoint, or if we were to see that stations were no longer able to participate in their membership dues, that would be damaging. But I think that Paula's point is the one that really people need to hear. The immediate damages to local stations. And with NPR, we have stations in more than 246 stations with newsrooms, more than 200 newsrooms in every state in the country, and that includes journalists who are out there covering their local communities, especially in a time where we're seeing an advance of news deserts across the nation. 20% of Americans don't have access to another local source of news. The impact of this could really be devastating, particularly in rural communities.
The president tweeted or socialed or truthed, Republicans must defund and totally disassociate themselves from NPR and PBS, the radical left monsters that so badly hurt our country. I have to tell you, I heard monsters and I thought of Cookie Monster. I thought of
did too,
Sesame
actually.
Street, and I thought of that children's programming.
Right.
That is in many ways what people think of when they think of PBS.
Absolutely.
Is that impacted too?
Absolutely. And out of this executive order, we believe it impacts our funding out of the Department of Education, which is a 30-year program that has supported the not only the creation of many of the children's programming that you see on public television, but also the research that we do to ensure that that programming is not just safe and enjoyable, but that children, after watching, come away with understanding of basic letters and numbers. Half the kids in this country are not enrolled in formal pre-K. That's why programming for children on public television was created. That was the idea with Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers, and everything that's followed since is to make sure that children that do not have access to a full array of resources have the opportunity to learn and to develop skills that they'll need the first time they enter preschool. That may be at age 2 or 3 or 4 and sometimes 5, not until they start kindergarten. That's what's at risk.
At risk or right now? I mean, do you have the money to keep functioning?
Well, we have programming, so you're not going to turn on your TV set and not see our children's programming anymore. Okay. But if that funding is cut off, we have programs in development right now, and that will suddenly skid to a halt. We also have stations around the country that work directly with preschool providers and parents, and this funds those activities. So the immediate impact would be fairly significant.
So, Catherine, I want to ask you about the news. When we went and we read the executive order, the language in there says government funding of news media in this environment is outdated and unnecessary, corrosive to the appearance of independence. And Americans have the right to expect if their tax dollars fund public broadcasting that it's fair, accurate, unbiased, and nonpartisan. How do you respond to the implication that your news coverage is not
fair and nonpartisan? I mean, I think
unbiased?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I think it's important to note that I'm the CEO and we have an independent editor-in-chief who oversees the newsroom. And so I don't make editorial decisions, and that I think is just always an important point to make. But I think our newsroom would really take issue with that. We have been on air for more than 50 years. We've been covering news as it occurs across the nation, in local communities, overseas. We have an extraordinary Washington desk, and our people report straight down the line. And I think that not only do they do that, they do so with a mission that very few other broadcast organizations have, which is a requirement to serve the entire public. That is the point of public broadcasting, is we bring people together in those conversations. And so we've had a whole host of conservative voices on air of late. We've been making requests of the Trump administration to have their officials on air. We would like to see more people accept those invitations. It's hard for us to be able to say we can speak for everyone when folks won't join us.
So that